There's a phrase that I think Richard Dawkins uses in one of his books, probably The God Delusion, where he says, all babies are atheists. All babies are atheists. In fact, I think there's a username here on YouTube, a user, beg your pardon, who uses the username, all babies are atheists. But I'm just not sure if it's true, actually. Just not sure. Well, I guess it's true, but only in a trivial sense, you know what I mean? I guess when a baby is still in the womb at a certain point, or maybe when they're in the first few hours or days of life, I guess they're kind of an atheist then, but only in the same way that a tree is an atheist, or a bush, or I don't know, a rock or something like that, you know what I mean? Only in the sense that all inanimate objects are atheists. But I'm sure that, well, I'm pretty sure at least, that that babies aren't atheists, actually. I think there's something else. Because I think, you know, because I don't know that much about child development, but I know a little bit. And my understanding is that when they don't come into the world as blank slates, we know that. So there is a kind of first draft organisation of experience that they have. But part of that, I think, is that they come with a sense of agency, or develop a sense of agency quite early on. You know, a sense of kind of beingness, a kind of sense that the world isn't just data. It has this, you know, it's like something, you know what I mean? What's it like to be a baby? It's that kind of thing. And part of that is this sense of agency, this sense of being an animate, active, intentional person, beingness in the world. But in the very first few days, maybe longer than that, I don't know, for a baby, that sense exists, but it's not located within their own bodies, or at least they don't make those clear distinctions between their body and the rest of the world that we learn to do as we get older, which is an essential part of the developmental process. You know, to young babies, as I understand it, they come into the world as part of a relatively undifferentiated set of experiences. It's not quite the booming, buzzing confusion that whoever, David Hume, William James, somebody talks about, but it is singular. It is kind of organised in that way, in which their selves and the rest of the world are not separated into this Cartesian divided condition that the rest of us wander around in, at least partially, part of the time. Yeah, so they come into it with a sense of a psyche. Actually, maybe they're not. Yeah, maybe there's something like panpsychists when they first come in. Panpsychism is, I think it's a term that comes from somebody called Fechner, 19th century, something like that. Panpsychism, this idea that the world has a mind. And you find, you know, contemporary versions of panpsychism in people like David Chalmers, who's a philosopher of mind. It's implicit in those phrases like, you know, the universe is conscious of itself. You know, that mind is just kind of out there stuff. There's lots of different versions of it. You know, there's kind of light versions of it you find in people like Max Wellman's, where he defines mind as a process that takes place not just in the brain, but in the brain through the perceptual apparatus to the outside world. So mind in Max Wellman's kind of loops out of the brain, not in that kind of weird force field way, but only in the sense that it doesn't really make sense to consider mind as just some movie that's playing in your head. You have to kind of imagine it outside of your head, because it's a process. And you find it in lots of other things as well. And also, as I say, you also get more hardcore panpsychists, and maybe David Chalmers is like one of those, where consciousness or psychic activity, psychology of some kind, is an irreducible component of the world. You know, just like space or time or matter or whatever, you know, extension. That mind is just an irreducible component, and we happen to be the loci, or the self-reflective elements of it, you know, the universe becoming conscious of itself, that whole shit, in my opinion. But that's just my opinion, you know, what do I know? Anyway, yeah, so I think I would strongly imagine that babies are kind of natural born panpsychists. You know, they come into the world with a sense of, an undivided sense of the world and themselves, and part of that undividedness is a sense of that there's a psychology in operation, there's a sense of agency. And that continues, you know, as we go through life. We don't lose that, but we just find foci for it. You know, so we become the primary focus for our own psychological activity. So rather than the mind existing all around it, we feel that it's, or maybe not mind isn't the right word, but anyway, the sense of agency just being everywhere. We locate it in ourselves, or we realise that it's something that we're doing, perhaps, and that we can recognise in other intentional agents, even intentional agents like my dogs. You know what I mean? And again, this is something that babies learn very quick. They very quickly learn to distinguish. Even though they start off as panpsychists, they very quickly learn to distinguish animate agents, like dogs, cats, human beings, or cartoons even, from inanimate ones. They learn to make that distinction really quick. But all of us are able to do the other thing, and are able to, you know, turn that off for a while and be panpsychists. And I guess we do, you know, a lot of the time when we're, I don't know. I just think we can. Yeah, we can do that. I mean, I've certainly done that many times. But then I think there's this possibility to do this other thing, because, you know, obviously we come into the world as very dependent beings, don't we? You know what I mean? Babies are really dependent, and their caregivers, you know, usually the mother, but not always. Their primary caregiver is you know, is something that they depend upon, and it's the conduit for accessing the rest of the world a lot of the time. You know what I mean? What you get comes through your parental involvement, and also through, and it's also mediated and organised and constrained through parental authority. You know, so what you're allowed to access and what you're given, what you're protected from, all comes through this parental thing. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if at that point the natural born panpsychism that we seem to come into the world with is also given this authoritative but also nurturing character. You know what I mean? So that the big mind at large thing that we have starts to look like the mind at large of a parent. And I think at that point panpsychism would flip over into pantheism, and we'd all be, and I think there's a sense in which it seems quite likely that we're all kind of natural born pantheists. And that doesn't always go away, I think. You know, we are very impressed by large powerful forces, and tend to give them characters. You know what I mean? Good and evil, they put on faces and they turn into people, as David Byrne sang. And we see faces all around us. We have what Justin Barrett calls a hyperactive agency detector. So we make mistakes a lot. We're constantly finding agents out there, and they're usually, and quite often they're authoritative agents or nurturing agents. We find the earth to be slightly mothering on a good day, and slightly like a tyrannical father on a bad day. Yeah. Go on, you two, I'm at the river. Yeah, so just in conclusion, I'm not sure if all babies are born atheists. I think we're all born as natural born panpsychists and natural born pantheists. And growing up in the universe is about learning how to moderate and modulate that, do things with it, and learning where it comes from, and when it's appropriate and when it's not. Yeah, that sounds possible.